Welcome to another episode of From Garage to Growth, and this is a podcast that unites continents by connecting African entrepreneurs with global insights, uncovering strategies and success stories, and influential figures reshaping the entrepreneurship landscape. I'm your host, Brian, and today my guest is Paul. And Paul is the CEO and founder of Shortlist, a leading African talent advisory firm whose work spans from venture capital, advising on global finance and economic development. So on today's episode, we're going to kind of talk about a few topics, which is the Africa's young labor force, the future of work, and how Shortlist is kind of addressing the key talent challenges within Africa. So I would like to give you the floor, Paul, for you to introduce yourself and just tell us a bit about yourself and kind of what sparked this journey into Kenya and ultimately finding Shortlist.
Yeah, great. And thanks for having me, O'Brien. It's a really great work you do. My name's Paul. I have spent the last 20-something years of my career oriented towards how we make markets work to make the world a better place. So early in my life, I'm from the United States originally, small town in Western New York State. Went to school for philosophy and psychology, which prepares you to do everything and nothing. Worked in advertising for a bit. Was a corporate lawyer for one short year. But really, most of what I focused on has been kind of what I'd call impact capitalism. How do we harness new business models, innovations in terms of how people's lives can be made better? So I spent many years in microfinance, supporting small loans to mostly low-income women to build small micro businesses. Set up an impact investing venture capital fund, a fintech fund called Axion Venture Lab, where I invested in about 30 startups. And it was kind of the combination of both microfinance and my investing experience that launched Shortlist with my co-founders, Simon and Matt, who are also investors and entrepreneurs. Essentially came at it from Shortlist from two angles. On one hand, after you invest in a bunch of companies, you get involved, you immediately realize that after money gets solved, people become the next biggest issues. And whereas there's dozens, hundreds of conferences and blogs and podcasts about how to raise money, there's comparatively little focus on how do companies effectively solve human capital challenges. How do you hire senior execs? How do you hire and build and train junior workforce and junior teammates? So we became really interested in how do we solve these human capital challenges to complement the financial infusions that were happening. On the flip side, my work in microfinance made me really interested in how do we create more job opportunities. I really believe in microfinance. I think it's on net a really positive innovation and part of the overall development and financial ecosystem. The reality is, though, most of the people we were giving loans to, they didn't want to be entrepreneurs. They were survival or necessity entrepreneurs. They were doing it because there was no wage employment opportunities, perhaps where they were living. And I think what got me excited in 2016 when we were starting Shortlist was kind of the dawn of a new era where you had this technology platforms democratizing access to knowledge, access to education, YouTube, massively open online courses, different ways that people could learn about work and different ways that people could engage in work. And we're now kind of in that new frontier where a decent chunk of a workforce in the world is doing their work from home. They're sitting at home, sitting in front of their computers, their laptops, either doing direct digital jobs or at least jobs that are now digitally mediated because they're spending a lot of time sitting on Zoom or Google Meet calls or things like that instead of going into an office. And I think that opens up a lot of new opportunities and creative approaches to how to get more people working and earning in really promising areas for the future. So I can get into Shortlist if it's helpful, but kind of that was what got us launched on this journey to try to solve human capital challenges, particularly focused in Africa.
And you spoke about this new modem of how people work. And what are the unique approaches that Shortlist uses to employ in order to address the specific needs of like the employees that you guys bring into the workforce? How do you go about recruiting? How do you go about getting them into those spaces? What's your unique approach?
Yeah. And I'll tell you a little bit about the journey we've been on at Shortlist because it has evolved. When we started, we knew that we were really interested in solving human capital challenges for companies driving impact and innovation across Africa, but we didn't know what the solution would be. we actually started as much more of a tech company. And we initially were hopeful that tech would be the answer to the people problems of all these companies we were interested in working with. As it turns out, and so we built a whole tech platform that combined assessments and chatbots. I think what we were motivated by was, one, how do you automate the very intensive, work-intensive process of collecting candidate data, screening candidates? More importantly, though, how do you collect data points and signals beyond the CV? Because I think the CV is a very limited tool that if it's all you have, it's what people rely on. But particularly for early career professionals, CVs are often more a function of, did you have rich parents that sent you to a nice school with good connections, than what are you actually capable of? And so we were interested in getting past that into indicators of potential, cognitive ability, ability to actually do the functions and tasks of the job. So we built that tech platform. We licensed it as a SaaS model. We had about 700, over 700 companies using it. But ultimately, as particularly prompted by COVID and some of the slowdowns around COVID, realized that we weren't having the depth of impact we wanted, and that to really really solve some of these human capital challenges, to be able to work on some of the job creation strategies we wanted, we needed to get more hands-on. So today, our model kind of breaks into two business lines. We do Shortlist Cert, which is a very hands-on senior leadership hiring approach. So we've taken the best from the global executive search leaders like Russell Reynolds and Egon Zehnder and organizations like that, and try to apply it and tailor it to the African context and to the context of fast-moving, high-impact organizations across Africa. We can talk more about that. On the other side of the business, what we call Shortlist Futures, we consider ourselves a workforce innovation lab. We're really interested in addressing the kind of the jobs crisis and the employment crisis that we see across Africa. Africa is the youngest population on Earth by far. By 2040, half of the world's workforce will be African. And there's a big mismatch between people entering the workforce and the jobs being created. There's about 11 million people entering the workforce every single year, and maybe 3 million jobs getting created in steady state. So if you think about the fact that we're already dealing with high unemployment, that is going to get worse every year. So Shortlist is really oriented towards how do we try to address that? And you mentioned, you asked the question, what are some of the approaches we use on that? There are many. And I think the reason we call ourselves a workforce innovation lab is because we've realized it's not a one size fits all approach. There are no silver bullets. This is one of these types of problems that needs all hands on deck and all answers. Some of the types of approaches we do talent pipelining into high demand careers, which basically means we go out, we raise awareness among young people about where the jobs will be. We assess them for basic underlying fit and readiness. We usually partner with training programs if and when training is needed. Very often, many of these jobs, you don't need any specialized training. You just need to get the opportunity to learn on the job. And then we'll facilitate on-job placements where people can then learn on the job, sometimes through internships or apprenticeship models. But we kind of talent pipelining into first work experiences has been really successful. I think we really do think that work experience is often the missing piece for young people. I don't think it's an education. I mean, education can always be better. We can always better connect education approaches to the needs of the market. But really, that's not the fundamental barrier. A lot of what we see in our recruiting work is that what companies are finding young people lacking is just the on the job experience. It's really on the job that you kind of absorb soft skills, you practice technical skills, and you develop a credential that the market really recognizes. And so I think a lot of that work has been successful. We've also been trying to look at different ways to promote remote work opportunities. We partner with a number of organizations who are offering remote work opportunities. One of the kind of cool models that we're developing is financing remote work equipment. One of the things we've seen is a lot of young people sitting in Africa are getting job offers or opportunities to work, but you have to then bring your own device. They say, cool, we'll give you a job, but you need a laptop with this spec. You need reliable internet. You need reliable power. And people don't have that. And it's a chicken and egg problem. You've got the job offer, but you don't have cash. You don't have the laptop. How do you sort
Yeah,
that?
you don't have the equipment to do it at all.
Provide zero interest loans so that people can buy Starlinks, laptops with the right specifications, power backups, and then go to work. The last thing I'll mention is we look at ways that we can support the growth and employment generation of small businesses. I do think we believe that small and growing businesses in Africa are underutilized for their growth potential and their hiring potential. So I can get into it if we want. There's a number of different programs and ways in which we're trying to support the growth needs of these organizations so that these small businesses, who are the lifeblood of employment and growth in most economies, so that those businesses can employ more people, they can create better jobs, they can create better on-the-job training opportunities and growth opportunities, and that they can grow in a more gender equitable and diverse manner. I'm happy to go into more of that, but yeah, there's a whole range of different things we've been doing as we try to get more people working and learning.
And the thing is, you spoke about the young population in terms of Africa and young professionals going into the workforce. And with the workforce or the work environment growing rapidly, what are some of the soft skills do you think people are essential to kind of have for the next decade that people need to have in order to be adaptable into the workforce that you need to acquire, or you just need to have in order to just function as part of the ever growing current global workforce?
Yeah, well, you said it, adaptability. We are entering a period of time where jobs are going to be disrupted really significantly by technological forces, particularly AI. I think we have this weird confluence of geopolitical, digital, and AI forces that are changing what it means to work and what jobs look like. So I think first and foremost, agility and adaptability and resourcefulness is going to be really high. It's going to be less important what you know and what you've learned. It's more important how you learn and how quickly you learn new things and change. So I think that's really important. I do think teamwork, and particularly teamwork through digital means, is going to be important. Your ability to work and get stuff done in groups that are often separated by geographic distance and all the things that go into that. So that's a function of your communication ability, your ability to stick to a schedule and be self-disciplined, your ability to work when all the kind of tooling that exists in distributed team structures. So like Google Calendar systems and Calendly and email and Slack and all these different things that are coming into play. So I think that's really important. Entrepreneurial ability, whether or not you start a business, more and more jobs are going to need to be entrepreneurial. Fewer and fewer jobs, particularly the good ones, come with a checklist. Much more jobs are coming with a kind of general purpose and go figure out how to create value. And so I think people's ability to approach their jobs like entrepreneurs rather than robots is important. If you approach your job via an algorithm in your head, good chance that a computer is going to take your job in the next 5 years, or a robot's going to take your job in the next 5 years. So, obviously there's exceptions. There are certainly jobs that need to be very checklist driven. But I think more and more, particularly the types of jobs we work on, that's really important. And related to that, showing initiative, being proactive, being creative in how you solve problems. I think a lot of the things that have been consistently important for a long time will remain important. I think that the struggle, if I may say, is going to be how do young people learn that in this new world? One of the things very much on my mind, these are called soft skills or durable skills or professional skills. How these get learned, a lot of research has gone to show it's really hard to teach these in classroom settings. These are normally things you learn by practice and you learn by osmosis, by being around other people doing them. And one of the things that is very much on my mind is if you are no longer going into an office, if you're no longer being kind of soft exposed to people day in, day out, doing good and bad things that you can learn from, and you're just sitting at your computer screen all day, I do worry that the opportunities to learn those will be slowed or compromised in certain key ways. We can talk about the skills that are needed, but how to learn them is a whole different question we'll all need to sort out.
Yeah, that is true, because I think that was my first experience going to corporate life, where I graduated then 2 weeks into the job, we went into full on lockdown. So I was in the position of like, oh, this is my first job since varsity. Now, what do I do? How do I acquire those skills that I need to like see other people do? Be like, okay, this is how you do it. This is how you implement this. How do I work now? Now, how do you think organization can build that culture around an environment now where people are working more remotely? How do organizations go about building a culture around the company?
I think it's one of the very hardest questions facing us in remote work contexts. It's the one we struggle with very significantly at Shortlist, and we know many of our clients are struggling with. As an example, so Shortlist we're about 50 people. The most people we have in any one city is about 18 or 19. But generally, we have a lot of people in cities with zero or just a couple of other teammates. Cairo, Lagos, Dakar, Joburg, Mumbai. And it's really, really difficult. One of the things we have had an office, as an example, in Nairobi, which is our biggest location. That's where I'm based. We've had an office here. We're actually probably getting rid of our office, partly because we're trying to be remote first. And in some ways, we almost felt like we were disadvantaging the non-Nairobi teammates. We were making them feel like satellite offices rather than full-blown teammates. And we're trying to be digital first. But the reality is we have a lot of wiring deep in our brains that require us as humans to be around other humans and interact in social ways, and ways that I think humans are still struggling with in a purely digital environment. I will say my colleagues in their mid-20s, they do seem better at forming real relationships and having real fun in digital environments. Like I'm perhaps a bit older, and it's strange for me to think about an online Zoom party, but like that's something that's becoming more and more common. Still, even doing that, I know that people crave in-person connection. So I do think that being a company, and we're still figuring this out, but being a company that clearly knows what you stand for, what your mission and purpose is, that kind of can keep people moving in the same direction. Having core values or habits or principles of behavior that make sense across markets, trying to be as transparent and documented as possible to ensure consistency. And then probably, even though it's expensive, investing in in-person time. We are considering doing an all-company retreat in one location next year and maybe making that an annual thing. That's a very expensive proposition. Intra-Africa travel, as you probably know, is really expensive. Frustratingly so. It's not like I'm from America in the US, and it's very not so much money to fly from, say, New York to Chicago or something. Whereas here, it's $1,000 to fly from Lagos to Nairobi. So it adds up. But I do think that making that investment is going to become important for us. I know other companies think about creative ways to create in-person moments, because culture is things like values, but it's also, as we think about the soft connective tissue of a company beyond just quote unquote culture, it's a range of different things that includes mental health, that includes social connection, that includes learning and professional development. All of these things are being kind of reinvented in this new world that we're in. And no easy answers.
Yeah. And on that, with Africa seeing this growth in high impact sectors like green energy and digital tech, how does Shortlist support the talent transition into those industries in terms of Africa and providing internationally?
Yeah. As a model, I think that what we encourage other people to think about is, given the dynamics of the labor market in Africa, we are not in a situation where you can just easily say, hey, cool, there's going to be a lot of demand for software engineers. Let's train everyone in software engineers and hope that they find a job. We're not in a market like that. We believe you have to be very demand anchored. You have to figure out, where is labor demand coming from? Where are jobs coming from? And more importantly, where can jobs come from? Because I think more than just business as usual, prepping for the future, what we all need to be thinking about is, where can we drive employment opportunities that might not otherwise exist? So what we're oriented a lot is trying to follow the money, so to speak, to like, where is there global demand, or can there be demand, and where is money coming into the continent to build sectors? One of these focuses has been the green economy. We've been running a variety of different early career talent programs across Africa with different funding partners, where we have pipelined about 7,500 young people into career track formal jobs in the clean energy sector. We've engaged with 250,000 others to introduce opportunities, to grow awareness about the clean energy and climate fields, and other things to try to prepare them for work in this space. So we do think following green economic transition, we think that is going to be a really big job creator. We just published a report in partnership with FSD Africa and BCG, trying to forecast where those jobs will be and how many there will be. We project over 3 million jobs being created directly in just a subset of 12 subsectors by 2030. That's over 3 million direct jobs by 2030. And when you think about all the indirect jobs, induced jobs, basically all of the ripples of economic activity and economic opportunity that those jobs create, it's actually probably a multiple of that. So we're very oriented towards both, how do we get more people working more quickly in this space? How do we prepare more young people for the demand that's coming? Examples like solar installation, wind turbine techs, these kind of you don't necessarily need to go to college for them, but you do need to go to get some sort of certification or training. So we're working on that. We're also looking at how to support more small businesses in the green economy, because I do think a lot of the green economic transition, green economic growth is going to be driven by a whole bunch of smaller, modestly growing businesses that are local. These are often the folks that can employ the most people, and we want to figure out ways to give them money, like stimulus grants, but also support to help them hire more people, create better on-the-job training opportunities. So that's in the green space. In the digital space, it's different things we're looking at. I mentioned before kind of the laptop and remote work equipment financing. I mentioned some of the partnerships we have with the bigger organizations. And then we're trying to collaborate and partner with others to drive more awareness of the African workforce as a place that more global companies should be turning to as they think about opportunities. How do we drive more demand? How do we improve the talent brand globally? Right now, when people think like business process outsourcing or global business services, usually India and the Philippines jump to everyone's mind. But in the future, when Africa is half or more of the global workforce, we're going to need to have built that infrastructure here and have created and brought the jobs here. So there's a lot of work that can be done. And it's not just digital and green. I do think that, like I said before, I think it's incumbent on everyone, follow the money, follow the opportunity. Where are the sectors that can be growing? Creative industries, music, entertainment, sports, tourism, the sectors where we can drive more dollars and demand coming from abroad, being injected into the ecosystem and creating more jobs and opportunity.
Yeah. And in that sense, you work with a lot of young professionals and professionals seeking to get into the job market or seeking to kind of move within the job market. What are some of the gaps that you see that are common within that space where people are trying to search for new opportunities or entering the job market that they as individuals are kind of doing most of the times when they're seeking out these jobs, and how can they kind of fix those gaps in order to be better candidates when applying for those specific jobs?
Yeah, it's a great question. I could mention a lot of things here, and I did mention kind of some of the soft skills maybe that are important. What I'll focus in on is perhaps the art of actually job hunting. One of the things with the recruitment work we've seen over and over again is most people, when they think about the job search, they think about them as a candidate, them as a product. They like, is my CV good? Does my experience good? Have I prepared for interview questions? In reality, it's usually much more important how you think about not your product, but your distribution. How do you get out in front of people? Yeah. What are the strategies you employ to get access to jobs? There's a statistic there's a statistic I often hear that says that 80% of jobs are never published. I don't know if that statistic's right, but it's directionally correct. There's a huge number of jobs that never have a job description written and posted to a job board. So if your approach to job hunting is going to job boards and clicking apply over and over again, those have a really low probability of success, particularly given the fact that you're probably going to be screened out by some AI bot that's looking for a series of keywords. So unless you exactly match the JD, you may not even get a chance anyway. You're missing 80% of the jobs that might exist if you do that. So what I think what we do a bit of work on, and I'd love to do more work on this, is sharing what are the secrets of kind of advanced job hunting that more people could tap into. It's things like how do you more effectively network via friends and colleagues and just cold outreach on LinkedIn. If you find someone that looks like they have an interesting career, what do you actually write to them in that email so that they're likely to take a call with you? If they take a call with you or they have a coffee with you, what do you talk about? What kind of questions do you ask? Mm-hmm. How do you get yourself set up? And what a lot of this is funneling towards is how do you help shape a job that maybe doesn't exist in a job description yet, but you almost have someone make a job with you. I refer to this as just like make your own job, MYOJ. Yeah. And like, I do think that that's a viable, I mean, before I started Shortlist, my last several jobs were make my own jobs. I kind of figured out what a company was interested in and what I was interested in and what that overlap was, and then kind of proposed, hey, here's some value I think I can create for you. Here's how much money you'll need to pay me for me to do it. Can we work something out? So I do think more of I think that, look, it's easier and easier to do cover letters on AI. It's easier and easier to have AI fix your resume. That's no longer really the issue. The issue is how do you get great work experience to build your own profile? And then how do you go about with that job search to more effectively uncover the hidden opportunities and develop opportunities that may not even have existed before? And it's a longer conversation because there's a whole bunch of interesting things we could get into about strategies for job search and other things we've learned from our recruitment work.
And in that sense, what are some of those strategies? Because I think that's the one thing that people would like to hear in terms of, if I change this up, maybe this shifts what I'm currently doing completely.
It's hard to boil it down to a couple. One is leveraging introductions better. If you want to work at a company, what most 99% of people do is they go to the company, they see if there's a job posted. If there is, they click apply. Or if they see that job they see a company advertising a job on a job board, they click apply. An easy thing to do that will instantly get you to the top of the pile is to get introduced by someone at the company. So step one, and it's amazing, this is why it's worthwhile to continue to try to always build your LinkedIn profile. If you share a connection with someone at a company, it's quite easy to ask a friend, hey, first off, you might know some of the company. If you know some of the company, say, hey, I see you work at so-and-so. They have a job posted here. Can you forward my CV to HR? Most people are happy to do that, and that will instantly probably get you higher in the review pack. That's step one. Step two is actually trying to have a conversation with someone at the company. So let's say you don't know somebody, but you have a couple of friends that know somebody. You basically reach out to your friends with a little blurb, like a little paragraph about what you want to talk about, and ask them to check with the person to see if they're open. And so it's kind of a double blind intro. So you're like, hey, O'Brien, I see you're connected to so-and-so at Paystack. I think Paystack would be an awesome fit for me. Here's a little bit about me. I'm Paul. I'm a former fintech professional. I love Paystack, blah, blah, blah. Like, would they be open to having a quick conversation with me? Those kind of warm intros go a long way to having a conversation. And then once you have a conversation, if you impress the person even a little bit, they'll often help you get to the top of the pack. The other thing I'll say is just like in informational interviews, people often approach informational interviews. Now, this is different. An interview is when you go in because there's a job and they're evaluating for your job. An informational interview is when there's usually not some job. You're just trying to learn more about the person's career, their journey, the company, something like that. One of the number one bits of advice I would say is don't ask closed-ended questions. Closed-ended questions is a question like, this is me. I'm Paul. Do you have a job for me? The answer is yes or no. And the answer is probably no. And then the conversation's almost dead. Ask open-ended questions. So it's like, can you tell me a little bit about how you got into this field? What do you like most about the company? What do you like most about your job? Do you have any advice for someone who's trying to get more experience in the field? If I can't find a job immediately, is there anything productive I can do? Et cetera, et cetera. Those open questions open people's minds into a universe of possibilities, as opposed to closed-ended where the person's just trying to figure out, gosh, how do I reject this person politely? Which closes them off. So it comes back. I remember when I was a venture capitalist, one of the bits of advice people would often say, which I think is largely true, is if you go to a venture capitalist and ask for money, they'll give you advice. If you go to a venture capitalist and ask for advice, they'll give you money. And the key to that is, and the reason that's partly true, not always, is because when you ask a venture capitalist for advice, they're sitting on your side of the table. They're on your team. They're thinking like you're thinking about a problem in your company, and they're excited to engage on the business. And then in the end of it, they're like, this is great. I love your company. Let's invest. If you ask them for money, keep in mind, venture capitalists, like HR managers and hiring managers, they say no 99 out of 100 times. So they're probably prepping in their mind how to say no rather than thinking, hey, how do I help this person out? What's the nature of their business? What's the nature of their problem? Who is this person? So I'll stop there because we could go on for hours on this, but there's a lot of the art more so than the science that I find interesting.
Yeah, that's definitely true. There's a lot of things that we could go on with regards to that topic. I want to touch now on this debate that's been going around with regards to remote work and how it's kind of changed the landscape a little bit, with companies now balancing between remote setups and office returns. What trends are you seeing within Africa kind of shaping the conversation around remote work?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things going on right now. One of them that I'll just say up front is AI. There's a huge question mark how AI will change the number of these jobs, the nature and quality of these jobs, the wage levels of these jobs. And I don't think anyone has the right answer because it's evolving so quickly, and the jagged edge of AI innovation frontier is such that it's hard to predict how these things will impact. So AI is one big theme. Another big theme is the importance of work experience, particularly in East Africa. This is different market to market, but I do think in Kenya, where I'm based, there's an awful lot of training and education opportunities, and tons of people have some certificate or training opportunities. Where people are really lacking, as I've mentioned before, is work experience. The on-the-job experience where they actually absorb these skills, practice these skills, and actually grow as a person and professional. So I think the importance of work experience and finding ways to get that first job and first experience, even virtual opportunities are things that people are exploring, where you almost go through simulations, and this could be a place that AI steps in. I think that's really important. I think thinking about how we cultivate more demand and what will it take for more demand. Part of that is infrastructural, better Wi-Fi, lower cost data, more device accessibility, more of a secondhand market, things like that. Some of it's not infrastructural and more just around how do we build better sales channels? How do we build Africa's talent brand? There was a company several years ago, Andela, who's still around, but slightly different business. But they really popularized the idea and stoked the imaginations of people around the world around Africa as a talent resource, particularly for software engineers. And I think like some of their messages around meet the African coding boot camp that's more selective than Harvard, that created a kind of like good feel. And I think we need sort of more efforts that are coordinated and are trying to raise the profile of Africa's workforce as a place companies should be turning. So there's a number of different themes going on right now. It really all though begins and ends with what are those, figuring out what are those job and tasks that are going to be in demand, that are easy to be made remote. And then what are the quickest pathways to get more Africans prepared and working in those fields?
Yeah. And the other thing within that conversation, which has been happening more recently, since the hybrid and remote works became a thing, is established companies kind of backtracking on the policies of remote work and going more to a work from home, work back to the office. Do you feel like this shift or reflection, in a sense, is a true indication of like signaling a return to outdated modes of management? Or was now, I think people became comfortable with the notion of flexibility, working from home, work-life balance. Now you get certain established companies backtracking on these policies. Do you feel like they're kind of missing the conversation or getting left out of the conversation?
You mean the organizations that are shifting back to office?
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, I actually, and this again, I have gray hair. I'm a bit older. Maybe I'm falling into the trap of being someone that's a Gen Xer, not a Gen Zer. But I actually think that the shift to 100% work from home is actually quite short-termist and is going to have a variety of long-term costs, most particularly for young people who are most advocating for flexibility and work from home. So it's like we've been having this debate even within our own organization. I think there's this perception, which I believe is false. Look, I'm a CEO of my company. There's this perception that senior executives, leaders want young people back at the office so they can like watch them, like surveil them as they do their jobs. And are they doing their jobs? And I was like, I have no interest in doing that. I would never ask you to come to the office so we could surveil you. If anything, I bet you we could create tech tools that surveil you better on your computers at home if that was the goal, but that's not the goal. I also don't think it's the goal that people just want young people around or they want their teams around so that they feel like they have something to do, so they feel important. I mean, that just doesn't ring true. The reason I think going to offices is still valuable is two primary reasons. One is, I don't know any better way than to grow as a young professional than to be surrounded every day by people doing the job you're doing, particularly doing the job a few years ahead of you. I think you can learn a lot of the good ways to be a professional and a good way to be in that job. You also can learn some bad things that you can say, note to self, when I'm a boss, I don't want to be a boss like that.
Don't do that.
And I think that that's harder. It's harder to get this learned by osmosis. If you're not sitting there and swiveling your chair around, it's also harder. I mean, so many of my early growth experiences were just kind of swinging my chair around in my cube and asking somebody next door, like, hey, how do you do this? Or how did you do this? Or can you show me how this like tech platform works? Or how do you make this site do the thing I want it to do? Or whatever. And I feel like, of course you can do that by sharing screens on Gmeet or Zoom or something. It's just much harder. So this like, I think professional, growth is stunted a bit by I also think that I think we're going to see this show up in more and more mental health challenges. To me, it's no coincidence that the rise of work from home seems to be, aligned with and corresponding to a significant rise in burnout, in depression and anxiety disorders. I do think, I mean, I'm not trying to be dramatic, but I do think that what happens is it's easy to see the short-term benefits of work from home. Like it's lovely to wake up, roll downstairs, have some coffee. And downstairs, I mean, most of us don't live in multiple floor buildings, but like, roll in your kitchen, grab some coffee, be in your pajamas and take a call. That's great. I get it. I think what people are underestimating is the long-term benefits because they're more invisible and they're not immediately linked in people's minds to working from home. But many young people are complaining about loneliness. They're complaining about anxiety. They're complaining about burnout. Those are not solved by going into the office, but I think they're addressed. So I mentioned before, we have shifted. I'm saying all this in the same breath that I told you that we've let go of our office. So we are very much struggling with what is the right answer here. I know that like we are all facing tough trade-offs. We for now have decided no office. We will probably invest in more travel and in-person time in kind of like punctuated bursts rather than every day. But I know every company is trying to figure out like what's the model that will work for us. And I think that's the question that if you're a startup, if you're a smaller mid-sized company, you need to be asking, given what our business is, given what our team is, given what we do, what's the model that work for us? Is it 1 day a week at mandatory? Is it 3 days a week? Is it 0 days a week, but it's once a quarter? We have a big party. What is it? So we're all figuring that out.
And you spoke about creating jobs. And one of the biggest issues that entrepreneurs or startups have in Africa is this notion of scaling up. So from your perspective, what are some of the biggest challenges for these companies in becoming sustainable job creators within the African ecosystem? What's kind of stopping companies from scaling up to the point where they can actually hire employees within the African ecosystem?
Yeah, there's many different things. And then this takes us into the square of like SME growth and development. There's a lot of emphasis put on money, and money's part of it. You need money to grow, and money is often in short supply. And I think in East Africa and in a few markets, Nigeria, South Africa, Egypt, there's been a growing up and down VC market. So if you're a venture capital style company, there is some money, although it's been a tough year or two if you're trying to raise that money. If you're not aspiring to be a $1 billion unicorn business, there's not a lot of options for affordable finance. If you go to a bank, first off, you probably won't get a bank loan, but if you do, it's probably going to be at 20% plus local currency. I do think money is a real issue. I'll focus more on the human capital sides because I think that's the side that's often overlooked. There's this misplaced belief often that if you have money, you will solve people. Because after all, you can take your money and just hire great people. What that hides is how inefficient labor and skills markets are. That it's not as simple as if you have money, you can just instantly find someone. There's a lot of friction, effort, complexity, luck into how you find that person, who you're networked with, what goes on. So I think for Shortlist, a lot of what we're focused on is how do we help small and mid-sized organizations grow by accessing the right people with the right skills, the right expertise at the right time and in the right amount. So of course, leadership hiring through Shortlist Cert is one of the things we offer. Workforce mobilization and junior talent hiring is something we offer through Shortlist Futures. And then we've also been doing selectively what we call fractional executive placements, where we take part-time or short-term or quick burst expert and executive work so that the company can have what they need. Maybe they don't need a full-time expensive CFO permanently, but maybe they need a 1 day a week CFO for 6 months to implement a new financial system or something like that. And I think that's something that we're increasingly looking at. So the human capital input side is something that we're really focused on. And I think is key to unlocking growth and hiring capacity.
Yeah. And looking ahead, what are some of the existing initiatives or projects on the horizon for Shortlist as you kind of work towards this ambitious goal of 100 billion in incremental lifetime earnings for Africa by 2035? Some of the policies do you see like, oh, this is working, this is leading us to this goal that we've put in place for our company to reach?
Yeah. Thanks for mentioning that. I think that you mentioned our goal of $100 billion incremental lifetime earnings for Africa. And it speaks to kind of how we see the world. We don't see the world in terms of just like number of jobs. We speak more towards how can we generate more income? How can we generate more local wealth? And how do we do that over time? We believe much more in trying to help people access formal wage employment in career track jobs, more so than just livelihoods, although we work in both. But generally speaking, we think it's harder, but more impactful if we can get people on career track jobs, or even if they're starting at relatively low compensation levels, say $150 to $200 a month as a customer service rep, let's say. Those are jobs that have shown over and over again that they are career track. You can stay at that company for 10 years and 10 years later, you're probably making 10 to 50 times as much monthly income. And we get very excited by that. Some of the things I've kind of alluded to them already, but generally we want to just look at what are the blockages and what are the opportunities to more people working. So support to small businesses in the green economy, plugging human capital gaps and addressing human capital needs to promote the growth of startups and small enterprises and mid-sized enterprises across Africa. We're looking very much now. In fact, we're launching a new initiative to look at how generative AI can be used to expand incomes, particularly for women and women's economic empowerment. So we'll be looking at use cases around labor market access, retailing, healthcare, financial services, and access to finance. Number of different initiatives. We have stayed generally solution agnostic and sector agnostic and loyal to where can there be more economic opportunity created, more economic prosperity created, more jobs, more income generated, et cetera. But there's a lot that we're working on at the moment.
Which is exciting. And as we reach to the end of our conversation, this is the question that I usually ask everyone, like, what piece of advice would you give to any inspiring entrepreneurs, anyone, any young person currently going through the journey of being an entrepreneur? This is the best practices that you would have liked to know when you were young.
It's a great question. I mean, there's so many different things. The one that jumps to mind, top of mind is fall in love with the problem, not the solution. I think that a lot of people, when they think about being entrepreneurial, either with their careers or starting a business, they think they have to come up with this like amazing, shiny idea. And idea normally means like a product or solution that you think is really clever and like fits the market. Those rarely work. The first version of anything you do is rarely the answer to the issue. And if you have this kind of superficial connection to this like idea you think is clever, that's probably not going to have the staying power that it will if you actually are in love with the underlying problem. Shortlist story is one example of something where we are in love with this problem of how do you solve human capital challenges for the companies that we love and that we care about. So the companies driving impact and innovation across Africa, how do we address human capital challenges? We thought the solution, the idea at the beginning was a tech platform. It wasn't. And by being in love with the problem, it allowed us to be imaginative and creative and flexible to say, okay, let's try something else. And now we have a business that's been able to grow consistently 40-50% a year for now 8 years. We've been profitable for a few years. And we're actually having the impact on the market that we want to have. We haven't solved it because it's too big a problem to solve in our lifetimes. But we feel like we're a meaningful player and a productive, additive player to this ecosystem of solving human capital challenges and creating economic opportunity more so across Africa.
Well, that is all from us.